Today's discussion will explore investment outlook and scaling opportunity in Cambodia. Please welcome.
Today, this panel is a fast and tactical conversation on early stage funding and what global investors are backing in 2026 and what gets filtered out quickly and how Cambodia startups can think regionally from day one. So quick panel intro. So we have Brandy Old from Alberta Innovates. She's the bridge between founders and capital access in the Canadian ecosystem. And we have Mayank from Angel Spark, so managing first check decision across MENA region. And we have Timur, my partner at 2080 Ventures, specializing cross-border scaling architect. So great, let's go straight to what's moving in global early stage capital. So I'll start with question one. Let's start with Mayank. So this is about global early stage trend signal. So in 2026, at pre-seed, seed stage, what are you funding more of?
It's no surprise, it's AI, right? But let me double click on that. There's a lot of data that's stuck with enterprise, with corporates, that they don't know how to handle. I think now with the new wave of AI and native AI tech talent, there's multiple ways to unlock that data to make better decisions, to make better programs, and to make better reporting internally, for example, as well. These are primarily the focuses that we're looking at. I'd say in summary, it's application layer of AI. The big tech companies are out there and they're developing extremely good models that have multiple use cases, but they can't be everywhere at the same time. So there's a lot of opportunity there.
Right, sounds good. So Timur, with this, shift, right? So do you see any like business model shift with AI or any proof of concept or traction shift?
I think now because of AI, making products has become extremely easy, right? So it's not going to be the case anymore that you bring an idea on a napkin and you're going to get funding immediately. What people are now looking at is traction. Traction becomes more important than ever because anybody in a basement, in a computer, even my grandma can vibe code a product. So that's not going to be your path to funding. What people want to see is traction. So like, I'm not sure, the raise of hands, how many of you guys know about Claudebot or Moltbot? Anyone? So you can see like products like that are communicating with multiple AI agents and then making lives of so many individual solopreneurs possible. And then so there are going to be things that we have never seen before. So we're on the lookout for things that are going to be very disruptive like that. Two, when it comes to AI and traditional businesses, right, are there any companies that are disrupting traditional businesses? That's especially what we're looking at. And of course, slow businesses, right? So a lot in defense tech, a lot in manufacturing. So companies like this is like the things that we're on the outlook for.
Thank you. So definitely now, because of the AI, everyone is using AI. I think everyone in the room using ChatGPT, kind of stuff. But what I see is also the domain knowledge or expertise or vertical AI, right? Otherwise, it's not really useful in business. So definitely, thank you for sharing those. And let's go to the second question. So the pattern. So I want to ask you, Brandy, so can you give one concrete yes pattern you've seen recently? What startup did right and what the signals that was mattered in terms of the investment or getting the term sheet or partnerships?
I'm going to double down on what Timur said. It's traction, right? It's so easy to build. And one of the phrases I usually say to people is you can do anything as a founder, but you can't do everything. So having focus on the right customer in the right industry and for a specific niche is what we're seeing help get founders funded. And it often does come down to coachability and flexibility. So you have an idea, you think it's amazing, as soon as it hits the market, you're going to get early signals it's not a right fit. So what I see with investment is if you're able to pivot and move with the market and be responsive, that's where we're seeing most investment come.
Right, thank you. So now I think the room understands the traction is the most important thing, right? I mean, everyone can build something now, but actually it's about finding the pain point and solving that pain point. Yeah, and let's move to the third question. I want to talk about red flags by stage, so in the pre-seed and seed stage. So to you, Mayank. So what's the single biggest red flag at each stage in the pre-seed or seed?
It's a good question. Look, in generally, the startup journey is quite long, right? You'll be looking at 8 to 10 years in emerging markets for an exit, right? So that is quite a considerable amount of time. So you want founders who have the patience, the understanding, the flexibility. It's going to be a long ride, a bumpy ride, and you need to have the patience and the right people around you to withstand that journey, right? So you touched on coachability. That's quite important, right? So do you have mentors around you who will be able to support you? And domain knowledge. Domain knowledge is extremely important. You should be building in a space that you understand better than anyone. When you go into client conversations, you want to know what they know more, right? So you can appropriately position your solution vis-a-vis your competitors. So I think those are typically the two things that I would look for. And anything that the founders don't have, for me, that's a red flag, right? So given, for example, right, so it's a long journey, 8 to 10 years. If you're a solo founder, maybe the first time doing something in this space without experience working in this space, for example, for me, that's a bit of a red flag. For me, that's something that, I wouldn't say I would never invest in, but it's something that I would definitely double click on.
Thank you. Okay, next to Brandy, and also to you, Timur, as well. So what is the number one due diligence trap in the early stage founder fall into? And what do you wish they prepared before the first call? Brandy first.
I like to call this Excel magic, son. So it's the idea that we've got this magic hockey stick curve with our financials, success is inevitable, and I don't understand the core KPIs that investors look for. So there's a guy named Dave McClure, he came up with pirate metrics, because you go R, and it's all about the process of traction. So how are you getting people to know you exist? How are they actually becoming paying customers? And how long do they stay your customer? A lot of startups go, well, I'm so amazing, everyone's gonna stay with me forever. Well, that's not true, right? Our customers are fickle today, so we have to know who we sell to and what makes them stick with us. I think that's the biggest trap people say, because they wanna tell us what we wanna hear, right? They go, well, I'm gonna make you rich, but we know that's not real.
Okay, to you, Timo.
I think, so I agree. So imagine whenever you're going to investor, you're looking at a checklist. What this checklist is pretty much like, imagine you're dating, right? What you're trying to see is how many green flags and red flags that you have, right? So like if you're dating somebody, okay, this person's alcoholic, he smokes a lot, he's a bad personality, he's very lazy. So like if you have so many red flags on a checklist, like it becomes invisible. So what investors like us is like we're trying to see as many green check marks that you have throughout this whole due diligence checklist. And what we have done at 2080 Ventures, I've taken an opposite approach. We've divided startups into 9 different categories, whether you're a SaaS company, enterprise, and so forth. And in those 9 categories, we look at like primary and secondary metrics. They're pretty much 4, right? And then so in those 4 metrics, we're seeing how you're growing. And so typically, like we know in those category that if you're growing by 5 to 10% week over week, we know we have a unicorn on our hands. We know you're going to become successful. If you are achieving 1 to 2%, that means, okay, there's something that needs to be figured out, and we look at how can we come in and add value, or maybe we don't have a unicorn in our hands. And then so when we're talking about numbers, these are the things that we tend to look at. So your job as founders is to get as many good check marks that you can get. And of course, when it comes to people like us at early stage investment, nothing beats founder charisma. And I think like Mayank talked about is in school, we're taught about not cheating. Cheating is bad, but in real life, that's not the case. And what do I mean by cheating? You need to have some unfair advantage, deep domain expertise. You're connected to the government. You're connected to people. You have a huge network. And this becomes your unfair advantage. And so investors like us, we tend to see, okay, can this founder attract right people? Is he charming enough? And at the end of the day, if you have no data, we look into founders' eyes, and we want to see fire into their eyes and say, this guy is going to make it rain. If I give him money, he's going to make it rain. And essentially, that's what you want to see.
Thank you. Those are very insightful stuff. So we talked about some global trends, right? And now I want to deep dive into some Cambodia to region scaling filter, since we're in Cambodia. So, so to all of you, so if you are investing from outside of Cambodia, and what makes you confident this becomes a regional company, not just a local one? And please give the top 2 signals that you are looking for from Brandy, Mayank, and Timur.
It's really important to start local, I think, because this is where your network is, this is where your domain expertise is, and this is how you can show your initial traction. And so for me, when I work with founders, I tell them, think big, start small, and act now. And that is so important on the persistence I think we're talking about, right? This is a long road. So what I like to look for is that you know your market size, and you know what your total available market is, what your serviceable addressable market is, what your serviceable obtainable market is, but also what your serviceable motivated market is. So how do you know that there's this blue ocean, this white space, where you actually have people that are beyond just your space that have this problem? And we talk about being a painkiller versus a vitamin, right? So those are probably the 2 biggest things. And how do you actually know how clear your problem statement is and who those early adopters are? And then building those relationships early, right? Sales take a long time and they're very relationship and founder focused. So if you start talking to people even before you're ready for sales, but if you're in the network, you become the emotional favorite for those folks. So when they actually start to look to change, they go, oh, I remember I talked to this person. Maybe they're the right person to talk to, and you become that de facto standard.
Okay, thank you. Mayank.
Sure. Look, as VCs, you look at big markets, you look at growing markets, right? So ones that are trending upwards. Cambodia has both, right? So it has both a large market and a growing market. What's very important for investors as well is the talent. I think the median age in Cambodia is something like 27 years, right? So that's incredibly powerful for a VC who is looking for a longer ride, who's looking for coachable people who have the tech expertise and domain expertise. So those are signals that I really look for as well. But another one which I don't think should go unnoticed, if I'm allowed to give 3, is ecosystem, right? There's markets that I would touch, there's markets I would not touch. Why? Because a founder needs an ecosystem around them. That's an ecosystem of access to government, access to corporate, access to talent. I met a president of a university right here in this room. That's very powerful. These are all the ingredients that are necessary to build a successful ecosystem. Of course, capital is another conversation as well. But these are all the factors that go into what builds a successful ecosystem, and I think Cambodia has that.
I agree with you. I think Cambodia is in the perfect spot to think about how do we start something in Cambodia regionally and go all across Southeast Asia and then global. Founders should be thinking about global from day one. It's not a question of if, it's going to happen. And so in the age of AI, I think relationships matter more than anything else, right? And then so you need to figure out like, okay, how do we build these relationships? And these relationships take years to build, honestly. And that becomes a defensibility from any of your competitors to come in, even from internally and from outside. And think about it, like even at 2080 Ventures, like for us to hire really great talent, it takes a year. It takes a year for us to convince and constantly talk to those people, even with our partners. And then so one thing I like to leave you with is that, when you worked so hard to get these relationships and once your foot is in the door, a lot of people think is that everybody works hard to get that first client or first meeting, but not many people work hard after. And don't forget that. It's like, when you are a founder, when you're on the stage, remember, like, you have to pitch throughout the whole 3 minutes, so you can't get tired in the first few seconds. The same thing with your business. It's like, once you get the client, don't get your foot off the pedal. Drive the car until the wheels fall off.
Thank you, everyone. That was really insightful. So from now on, I would like to get some questions from the audience. So from the audience, do you have any questions to our international panelists? Anything about your business or about how to get funding or how to enter other markets?
This is a question for everyone, but particularly Mayank. With AI changing so fast, how do you choose your investments with confidence that they're not going to become obsolete?
I think there's a few things that we look at here, right? I think one, Timur, as you mentioned, is an unfair advantage, right? So what makes the company investable is not the product, is how sticky the solution is. Things move very fast, but you want a founder who can move even faster, but can ensure that that contract stays and that they have an unfair advantage, as Timur said, to expand and grow, right? So it could be that you're operating in a sector where, let me give you an example. There's a founder that we invested in recently. It's a company called Retail Hub. They operate in the space of quick commerce and retail. And essentially, there's a lot of data that exists in this value chain, but it's fragmented across multiple different pieces. And it's also, there's a big lag, right? So your 7-Eleven, for example, cannot give visibility to, I don't know, Marlboro on how many cigarettes are being sold at any given point. These guys use computer vision to actually give you that level of visibility. Now, that technology is not new. That technology, computer vision, has been there for about 5-10 years. But what they have is a unique approach for distribution, for go-to-market. They have partnered with the quick commerce companies that are actually in the store to be able to gather that level of insights and data. So it's a very good question. I'd say that in summary, it's not the product that makes you unique, it's the approach to landing the product and expanding that product either within your contract and your client or geographically across other markets and other clients.
I'll just double click on what you said, really, right? And I think team is a really big part. So when Timur talks about relationships, this is key, right? Don't take your foot off the gas when you talk to folks. When you're focused and you start with something slender, how do you grow? How do you bring more value to that company later? And I always like to think about, like a 3 pricing strategy. So how are you going across different customer segments and not being afraid to go into like the Fortune 500 companies? I think startups always think, well, I have an AI solution, I'm going to compete to the bottom because it's cheap. And we forget that our higher paying customers have similar problems and their data sets are more complex. So we want to be able to trust that you have that expertise, that you have your foot in the door and you're going to keep evolving. That's what we look for. It's that coachability so that we know, even though the tech's changing, you're going to change with it and still deliver value.
Any more questions? Yep.
We're from Cambodia Youth Consulting, or CYC, a startup that essentially provides skill development programs for young people in Cambodia, but we're looking to expand into commercialized talent matching services, connecting students and young people with internships and entry-level roles with local businesses here. And as we go through this transition, I just wanted some advice from some of the people on the panel about sort of green flags and red flags to look out for a startup that is looking to provide talent matching services.
And what do you especially mean like green flags and red flags in perspective of what?
In perspective of essentially building our startup and developing our services, if that makes sense. Or perhaps I worded it incorrectly, but sort of important factors to keep in mind as we look to develop this service.
I think one of the things that you need to look for is like, how do you price the service, right? So like there are 2 ways to win, especially in one end, you become the cheapest and you provide like a really okay service, like I would say level 7 or 8 to a lot of people, or you go after like the really expensive people, right? Like, okay, we become the Cadillac or the Bugatti of like what we're doing. And these are the people we're going to service. In the middle is where you die. So like one thing that's where you need to do, your product needs to be really, really, really good. And I mean like within your competitors, like especially when we're running things that we're looking at is like, we are constantly improving. And I truly believe that we are some of the best people when it comes to building innovation and ecosystem programs. And then so you also need to be that. And last thing that I would say is like, partnerships and clients. So when you're creating something like this, you also need to have 2 people in mind. One is, what are your POCs seeing on a daily level? And what are the executives seeing? What are the KPIs that they're looking at? So at the end of the day, KPIs are only things that matter. So achieving those numbers for your corporate partners is really important.
All right. Do you have something to add, Mayank?
Yeah, sure. Happy to add to that. I think a lot of first-time founders, they fall in love with the product and not the solution, right? So I'd say that Forget about building, an actual tech, the entire tech stack of what your solution is. Fall in love with the solution fall in love with the solution before you fall in love with your actual product, right? So make sure you understand exactly how your customers are sourcing that talent currently, where exactly they have the pain point, right? Are they overwhelmed with applications, or are they struggling to get any applications? Is it the quality of talent they're struggling with, or is it the volume, right? So go into a lot of depth into the actual problem statement, fall in love with the problem statement, and build after that, right? And if it means that you have to, offer this service to your client manually, through manual outreach or whatever your solution is, that's okay, right? Building the tech part is the easiest part, but it's what you can build after, right? You can look at scalability once you've actually nailed your solution. So solve the problem first, and then figure out scalability is my solution, my advice.
All right, we're running out of time, so we're going to close here. Thank you so much, audience, and thank you so much, panelists.
Thank you.